For the next session, we have CA Babu Jayender to share his views on ISCA. I request B.T. Shetty sir to escort CA Babu Jayender onto the dais and welcome with a flower of bouquet. I would like to introduce to you CA Babu Jayender. He has over 30 years of experience in ISCA. He is also certified info system auditor. He is a speaker at various meetings and seminars on ISCA. He also consults in the area of pattern recognition software for foreign auditing in banks and various other fields. We welcome you, sir, and we would like to take over the session.
Thank you. I've been told to talk on a subject called ISCA, and I think you people find it difficult or you find it easy. Yes, and the reason it's easy is because you're from new generation. You're not like me with grey hair. People who come from my generation will find it easy, difficult, but I think you shouldn't have any problems. Now, I was told that I have to talk about how to write and prepare for these exams, specifically for ISCA. To me, ISCA stands for India's Super CAs, and that's you guys, right? And it's very, very important for you to realize that, IT, which is not income tax, information technology, is here to stay. This is the reality of the world that you're going to live in. And so ISCA as a paper is very, very important if you want to succeed as a chartered accountant. And if you really want to excel in the field of audit, accounting, etc. So please take this subject seriously. It is not rocket science, let me tell you that. I have spent all my life doing systems audit. I am not, I don't know anything about income tax, although I'm a chartered accountant. I have never filled up a return. I still don't know how to do it. But for so many years, I've built a career on this because there is a huge worldwide demand for this. People who are chartered accountants and who also understand technology. And what happens is that if you do both and you excel in both, it is an absolutely lethal combination for success. You will really, you not just India, you can take over the world in terms of doing your audits and excelling in whatever you're doing in the field of accounting and auditing. When they ask you to say things like how to prepare for an exam and how to pass an exam, I think the most important thing that you should know is that as long as you get your concepts right, any question you will be able to answer. That is absolutely crucial. I heard from others, I don't know how far it's true, that some students actually mug up what's written in the ISCA study material and just, vomit it out at the exam. I really don't think you should do that. Okay, it is today, technology is part of us. You own a mobile phone, you're doing your internet banking, it's all there to see. You go for retail, you buy something, you're swiping a card, your transactions are flowing through, whether it's Paytm, whether it's a credit card, you know what two-factor authentication is, you know that an OTP comes into your phone. These are all very, very basic. I can understand in my days when 90% of the companies were manual and only 10% was automated. It was a difficult concept to understand. But today, I don't think it's a difficult concept to understand. So, whatever you read, you please try to make sure that you understand what is said therein and always try to link it with some sort of an example. So, like, if supposing you're reading a chapter, say, on governance, okay, I think you have governance, which is your first chapter. Say you're reading a chapter on governance, risk management, etc. You just try to link it. Where is the risk and where is the control? Now, when you talk about a risk, we are chartered accountants, we are auditors. The risks that we are bothered about is the risks that happen at business processes. Now that you are all writing the final exam, I'm sure you know when I say purchase to pay cycle, you know that there is a purchase requisition, followed by a purchase order, followed by a goods receipt note, followed by a supplier invoice, and a payment is made. You all know that. That is part of your DNA, right? So what you've got to realize is, each of these business processes and sub-processes has a risk, and you have to put a control for that risk. That is the way you will mitigate that risk. Now, the challenge that you have in today's world is most of the controls are automated and it is done in the system. So you've got to understand that in a computer system, there are certain configurations that you have to do. There are certain settings that you have to do in the masters for the system to work in a specific manner. Again, I'm going to give you an example. The reason I'm giving you an example is so that you understand what I'm saying. And what I want you to do is, when you are actually reading the study materials, every single thing that you have in the study materials, if you can convert that into an example based on what you have seen in normal auditing, I will guarantee to you that this concept will stick in your mind. Okay? That is the only thing you should do. So let me give you another example from order to cash cycle. From order to cash cycle, you know that you get a quotation, then you make a sales order, then you dispatch the goods, you make a supplier invoice, and then you receive the payment from the customer. Now let's assume that there is a risk in the business process that when I'm raising a sales order on a customer, I want to be absolutely certain that his credit rating is good so that I get my money when I sell to him. I also want to be absolutely certain that if he has a credit limit, the invoice is raised only within that credit limit. Okay? Because if you raise an invoice higher than the credit limit, he may not pay. So, supposing the credit limit is 1 lakh, and if you are raising an invoice for 1,50,000, in the good old days, before computerized systems came in, how would you do it? You would say that every single invoice raised which exceeds the credit limit will be reviewed by the sales manager, and the sales manager will approve it. And based on his approval, based on all the finance manager's approval, you will raise the invoice. Today, this is done on computer systems. So what you have to do is, you have to go into the system, and then you've got to do a credit thing, what they call as a credit limit check. The minute I raise the sales order, and it will see what the value is, 1,50,000, it will go to the credit limit which is set in the customer master. It will go and check, is it within 1 lakh? If it is not within 1 lakh, it will put it on credit hold. Okay? It will not raise that invoice until an electronic approval is received from a senior person, either from the finance manager or from the sales manager. Okay? So that is the control that you put in place. Now, when you go and read about risk management in governance, your first chapter in ISCA, and you just mug it up by heart, what happens is it's just mere text, right? and you're not relating it with anything. And that is why I have noticed that a lot of people, a lot of youngsters find it difficult to understand. Okay? Because they're not trying to link it with anything or trying to identify some real world examples. Now, one of the methods in studying for ISCA is that I have told this to many youngsters who have joined for CA, and I'm going to repeat it to you all also, is that, see, we live in a place like Bangalore, and frankly, whether it's Bangalore or anywhere in India, the luckiest thing that we have is most of us have got IT friends. Most of us have got friends who are software engineers, or database administrators working somewhere or the other. My suggestion to all of you is that if you do not understand a concept, you please talk to him. Instead of going for a movie, one day, one Saturday, you sit and clarify all your doubts with your tech friend. And in this world, it always has to be a two-way street. It cannot be a one-way street. Most tech people do not understand business processes. And most CAs do not understand technology the way it should be learned. So what I suggest you do is, you exchange your ideas. The example I gave you, in terms of small, simple thing like a sales order being raised, you tell them how the sales order process works, and tell him to explain to you how the settings are done in a computerized system. It can be Microsoft Dynamics, it can be Exacta, it can be SAP, it can be Oracle Labs, it can be Tally, it can be anything. Okay. Once you see that, you will not forget it. And it will always be with you for the rest of your life. So, like, I can tell you for certain, a lot of you who haven't seen a database will find it difficult to understand what a database is. Now, learning systems, the toughest thing with learning systems is it's abstract. Okay, it's very, you're doing things in a virtual world and you don't see it. And it's very difficult. It's like learning calculus for the first time. Okay, it's very, very difficult to understand calculus when you do it for the first time. But if you want to see what a database looks like, all you have to do is tell one of your IT friends to just show you what a database is. Most people will have it on their laptop, Microsoft Access. Okay, that's a database. He can tell you what a field is. He can tell you how a field is defined. He can tell you where you store it, how you make a folder. Today, all these things are easy. I mean, you all do it on a daily basis. I mean, creating a folder and all that. But for you to understand how do I interrogate a database to get information out? How do I create a query wherein I have to say that from this file, I want you to extract this field, this field, this field, right? So say I want to know which are the customers that have exceeded the credit limit. I need to get the credit limit field. I need to get the current balance. Then I've got to compare current balance with the credit limit, and all the ones that are greater than that I have to put it in another column like you do in Excel. Okay? I hope you're with me, because I hope you're understanding. I'm trying to keep it very, very simple for you all to understand, so that you don't think that learning for ISCA is rocket science. It is not rocket science. It's very, very simple and it's extremely logical. The greatest thing with computer systems is very, very logical. And so understanding it is not at all complicated. You don't have words like notwithstanding, section such and such, and subsection such. There's nothing like that. Those are the things for me which is very, very tough. Where I have to read any paragraph starting with the word notwithstanding. So this doesn't have that. So try to keep it simple. Try to understand it in a simple manner, so that you will be able to at least express yourself well in the exam. Now we're talking about governance and information systems in chapter 1. I'm talking about that because I think that is your chapter 1, right? Governance. Now, they talk a lot of stuff in the ISCA paper about governance. But today, in the real world, if you see, what is the most important act that has come in India pertaining to governance? It is Companies Act 2013. It is Section 134 and Section 143, where the board is responsible if the controls are not adequate and working effectively. And the auditors are liable as per Section 143. Okay. Now, if you're asked any question on governance, and there's no point in you quoting Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Sarbanes-Oxley Act is valid in the US. But if you quote the Companies Act, Section 134 and 143, right, it is valid in India. The examiner will realize that you are absolutely answering based on what is relevant in India at this point in time. So, Companies Act 2013, as you know, is not in the study materials because it happened after those books were printed. So, if you write, so what I'm trying to tell you is that if wherever you have anything, try to bring in an example as much as you can. Now, you have the first chapter you're having is on governance. I think your second chapter, what is your, anyone of you remember? Information systems concepts, I think, right? Information systems concept. Now, when you read things like information systems concepts and all that, at your age, I don't think it's a problem to understand at all. You know, in the olden days, it was completely different. You know, text used to write things like, you know, there is a thing called a hardware and there's a thing called a software. I mean, these things are pretty logical. And every one of us knows that there is a hardware, there's a computer, we know that there is this thing, there's an input device, there's an output device. It's all in your head. Nobody has to tell you. So you can on your own think and write. But for you to understand why, that's the reason I gave you the example of database, because database is something that you have, someone should show it to you, then you won't forget. Okay. Now, you read all that and then you come to say protection of systems. We know the importance of protection of systems. You all know. You all have a user ID and a password. You definitely want your internet banking account to be protected. Okay? You definitely don't want anyone else to do a phishing attack and take all the money from your account. Right? So you have to protect it. And everybody knows that data is one of the most important assets in today's world. Because if the competitors get it, they have an advantage over the company that you're working for. So data has to be protected. Now, how do you do it? So you must remember that things like hackers, they always stay ahead of the rest. So you've got to come out with new controls as and when, you know, it progresses. We did not have two-factor authentication before. Right? OTPs came just now. Before, I'm giving you an example so that you will be able to understand whatever is written in that study material with simple examples. Okay, that's why I'm trying to give you as many simple examples as possible. Before, you had a credit card, okay? And all of you must have gone with your friends to restaurants with a credit card. What did you normally do? The normal way you used to behave would be, all friends would sit together. When the bill comes, someone puts the credit card and you continue talking. Now remember, when you're talking about protection of systems and protection of your own privacy, if you give a card and the person takes that card in that folder to the cashier, he's got your card number, he's got the expiry date, he's got your name, and he's got the CVV number at the back. Because most people do not memorize the CVV number and then scratch it out. How many of you have done that? Have you scratched out the CVV? You haven't done it. You haven't done it even today, right? So those days, if I had this, all I had to do was keep an Excel sheet and enter all these details and mail it to somebody for a price. You know, I could sell it to someone, all these data, and they could, you know, buy air tickets on your account, whatever they wanted to. Today, they brought in OTP, the two-factor authentication, wherein it has to send you a password, a 1-minute password which will come on your mobile phone. Okay, so things have changed, but definitely even this will have a vulnerability as we go along. But I want to ask you one question. What is it that you all feel is tough in ISCA? Please feel free to say what you feel like, okay, so that I can specifically address that question. What is it that you all find is tough in ISCA?
Remembering headings and subheadings is so much.
Okay, here he says that remembering headings and subheadings. See, remembering headings and subheadings, if you memorize it, it is tough. But if you try to understand it, it is not tough. I mean, like protection of information system, it's a no-brainer that you have to protect it. Audit of information systems is a heading, right? You have to audit information systems. Governance, we all know about governance. Then, okay, business continuity planning must be a new heading for you, right? But if you look at it from the perspective that if I'm running an industry, okay, please remember that the database is like the human heart. If that crashes, that company will come to a standstill. Nothing will work. You cannot raise an invoice, you cannot do anything. So, why do you have to have business continuity planning? It's only because whatever you are having in your systems, which is in your production system, and what do you have in the production system? You'll have your application, you'll have your databases, right? You'll have your operating systems which are running there to make your applications run, okay? And all live data. Unless and until I have a mirror image of this in another server, which is my backup server, if this crashes, and I should be able to automatically switch on to the other one. Isn't that logical? Isn't it a very logical thing to understand? It's nothing complicated. Okay. So, if you start trying to understand why this is done, you will not have to mug it up. Because if they talk about business continuity planning, if you just mug it up, then what will happen is you're only thinking in terms of the headings which are there. Otherwise, you can even recreate the answer in a logical way, and the examiner will definitely know that you know what you're talking about. Okay. So, that is the reason why, and disaster recovery. So one is to keep the thing going on, the business going on without any problem, and disaster is, you know what, an earthquake can hit a computer center. So there is a lot more to be done. Okay. So, try to look at it from that angle. Then you have Information Technology Act. That is an act, that's a law like anything else. You can always read that. Okay. Then you have emerging technology. Now emerging technologies is something that is always emerging. You write a chapter today. Today, if I remember in your ISCA paper, cloud computing has been put there as emerging technologies. Today, everybody uses cloud. Okay, so there's nothing emerging about that. But so those type of chapters are something that will vary as time goes by. But the fundamental concepts that are there in ISCA are not going to change. A database will always be a database. A network is required for the purpose of connecting all systems together, so that I can sit here and maybe access some company even in the UK. Right? And that is all provided through networks. Now, so don't go by this mugging it up by. Is there any other points that you are mentioning? Which you find? Yes, please. Make it interactive. This is not a formal class or something.
The confusion about understanding the question and writing the answer. Say, for example, what is sensitive information and what are the types of information. So when we start writing answer, we get confusion about writing sensitive. Instead of writing sensitive information, if you write types of information, there will be actually 100% you are going to get 0 marks, right?
Yes.
How to come up from this, all this?
See, like say for example, go by the normal, sensitive information, you know what it is, right? It's not, you know what sensitive, in a company, or take for yourself, sensitive information, you will definitely not give certain things, right, out to everyone. Your user ID and password will not be shared with anyone. For whatever you're doing, whether it's for your laptop, whether it's for your internet banking, right? Those are all sensitive information. Like that you have within sensitive information, in organizations, they break it up into confidential, top secret, things like that. Okay, sensitive information which you cannot, it's not available to public. Now, when you have, and why, okay, now let me tell you, why is it that they classify this to different types of information? Right? You must understand that. The reason why it is classified only for the purposes of protecting it. Because the level of protection will vary based on the sensitivity of information. So if it is highly confidential or top secret, nobody will know. Recently, we went through this demonetization. There were only few people who knew on, before 8th of November. Very, very few people. I don't think even people in RBI knew. Now, this is top confidential. Similarly, you have that, and in information systems, the reason why you have to classify these two types of information is only because of the fact that the protection level will have to vary based on how sensitive that information is. Now, take minutes of board meetings, for example. Minutes of board meetings is today, most of it is documented. It is either available in a Word document or a PDF. It is highly sensitive. If you have to take a company like Reliance, and if someone had access to the board minutes, it can affect the stock prices if it leaks. So it has to be protected, and that it is only for that level of protection that you have this classification of information. Okay. So if they ask you a question on, say, sensitive information or types of information, now you know what the difference is. Okay. And give examples, like I'm telling you now. Don't just write about sensitive information. You give this board minutes, highly sensitive. User ID, password, highly sensitive. Another example I'll give you. You talk about user ID and password. If you go to a company, you will sometimes hear people screaming from one corner to the other saying, "Can you give me your user ID and password? I have to just do something. Some work I have to do." And that fellow will shout out right across. Everybody sitting in the middle will know. However, if I had to shout out to you and ask you, "Can you give me your internet banking user ID and password?" you will say, "No way." Now, when it's your own personal things, you will protect it. But when it is some office thing, you will not give it that much of importance in protecting. So, these are the things that when you're reading, and as much as you can, if you can connect with the real world, whatever you are reading, connect with the real world, you'll find it much, much easier to learn. And today you have the greatest tutor, Google. If you don't understand anything, just right click and do search in Google, you will get something with examples, images, what not. Right? So you must learn by not just reading from the study material, but if you don't understand something specifically in the study material which is technical, right? Like if you read something like star topology in networks, right? You're reading that. You just search on Google, right? Look for star topology in images, and you will get very good diagrams to show you what it is. You don't have to restrict yourself to what is given there in that study material. You've got to expand because technology is very, very vast. And it's very, very difficult if you do not, you've got to really keep up to date with what is happening. And you have audit of information systems as one of your chapters. You have also ERP there. Okay. How many of you have worked on an ERP? Either from audit or accounting or whatever in your... how many, can you put your hand up who has worked on it? Only one, is it? One or two? One or two. So most of you have worked only on Tally. Right? Most of you have worked only on Tally. Now, I understand the difficulty that you must be having to conceptualize this. Right? What is an ERP? What is the difference between an ERP and Tally? But what you should know is that in Tally, most of what you do in Tally is accounting. Whereas in ERP, it does practically, that's why it's called enterprise resource planning. From the time you're procuring, right, it does the logistics in bringing the goods into your system, and then also it helps you in terms of sales. Keeping track of everything, your finance, all that is done in ERP systems. Now, the problem that you have is that it is interconnected. So when I say it is interconnected, if I raise an invoice in an ERP system, the minute I raise the invoice, it will debit cost of goods sold, it will credit inventory, it will debit the customer, and it will credit sales, sales tax, etc. And your financial statements are updated instantaneously. That is different from systems where if I have to do the same thing and I have to pass a journal entry going and debiting the cost of goods sold and crediting inventory and debiting the customer and this thing, it is quite a task if you have to do it, for all the transactions that are happening. So, if you haven't seen an ERP or you've not understood an ERP, what you can do is either, if you have a friend who has worked on an ERP system, it doesn't have to be high-end SAP and all that, it can even be Microsoft Dynamics. If you have a look at Microsoft Dynamics, you will see the flow. And if they show it to you once, the very fact that you all are doing chartered accountancy, you've got definitely above average intelligence, so you will be able to easily understand what is being shown to you. And based on that, you will be able to at least figure out the difference between an accounting software like Tally and an ERP, which is like an SAP or an Oracle. Okay? Anyone else? Any other problems? Is it the, okay, now coming to the, how many of you have gone through the questions and answers of the previous exams? I presume all of you are doing that. That's very important. Okay, because that will give you an idea of the flow, the way in which the questions are asked. But I saw only a few hands up, but I think the rest of you also should definitely go through the questions and answers in order to figure out what it is, because that will definitely help you, because you see, writing down is very important. You've got to write down, when you start writing things down, it brings a lot of clarity in your mind. Whatever it is, whether it's ISCA, whether it's taxes, whether it's accounting, if you start writing things down, you will notice that it brings a lot more clarity to your mind. So even when you're trying to, if you're going through the suggested answers which are already there for the past ones, read the question, write it out yourself, and then try to compare it with what is the actual answer given, for that question, and see, where you've gone wrong. You don't have to, verbatim check whether everything is correct, but you've got to definitely check whether the basic concepts have been put there. Okay? Now, I'll give you another example. You must have read in ISCA about these frameworks, like COSO and all that. You read that? You read about the COSO framework and all that. If someone asks you about COSO framework, you've got to definitely know the 3 objectives of COSO framework. You know, the reliability of financial information, all that, you've got to know that. That's fundamental. And you've definitely got to know what is control activities, control environment, you know, all that type of those basic things. You've got to know it. Because, and this risk assessment, you know, which is all part of the framework. Now don't mark it up just by heart. What you should do is read that and see how relevant these things are from the real world that we are in. You know, when you talk about control environment and you know, you talk about tone at the top. In an organization, if the person right on top is very, very control conscious and is extremely transparent in what he's doing, that will flow down the organization. That is the reason why today the Tata Group is highly, highly respected. Okay? Because of Infosys as a company is highly respected because they are very, very control conscious. Now, if you have a company where the people really don't care about controls, the chances of something happening and the fraud or something happening is much higher. So, that is the reason why when you talk in terms of COSO framework, it has broken it down into different entities, and you must have seen that cube, right? Where on the front side they have broken it down to this control environment and monitoring and all that. And you know, it will tell you exactly what are the different resources, etc. So look at it from that perspective. When you see the COBIT is also there, right? So you've got that. Now in COBIT, you must know some of the basic things of COBIT. You know, like what is a domain? You know, what are the resources? You know, what you're trying to protect. Don't just mug up COBIT. But why is it that you have frameworks? Why is it that there are frameworks today worldwide? The reason why you have frameworks is the body it's like many people, many groups. It can be Institute of Internal Auditors, it can be ISCA, it can be Institute of Chartered Accountants. All people like that have sat together, put their thoughts together and come out with a framework which is like the best practices to follow. So that an organization can just you know, get that framework and then tweak that framework the way in which they want to implement it, which will fit the needs of their organization. So, when you're reading a framework, make sure that for any framework you want to get marks, the basic things have to be written. You do not have to mug up all the different you know, domains and subdomains in COBIT. You don't have to mug up every single thing. But at least you know, you should know in acquisition and implementation what is there, right? The basic things you should know. But you don't, nobody's going to ask you a question that write all the 36 domains that are there. Nobody's going to ask you that. So and you know, I am not the type of person, because I am not an astrologer, right? So I am not the type of person who will say that, you know, for this coming exam in May, you will, I think because they asked in the previous exam these questions, you will not get those questions, these questions may come. If you study like that, you are taking a very big gamble. You got to study every single thing in that study material. And you cannot take chances, because I can tell you ISCA is a scoring paper. You may not feel that ISCA is a scoring paper, but it is a scoring paper because you do not have to write huge amount of pages and pages, right? You've got to get that concepts. All you have to do is make sure that the examiner realizes that you have understood the concept of what is being asked. So you got to write what that concept is all about, and to make sure that he understands or realizes that you have understood it properly, give an example. The minute you give an example which is relevant to that point, he will immediately know that this student has understood it pretty well. And every single thing that is there in the study material has an example to the real world. Every single thing. So, BCP, you spoke about BCP and disaster recovery. We have seen so many earthquakes have had all over. You know, there was some devastating earthquakes in India also. Now, if there was a data center there, it's all gone. How do you recreate? What is it that I have to do to recreate it? Till when was the data lost? You know, from which stage can I start bringing it back? Because these are all transactions that have taken place. Okay. Take for example, today Aadhaar. You got 1 billion people on Aadhaar. What happens if the database crashes? You're doomed. You're doomed. So you can imagine what the backup systems that are in place for a database as big as the Aadhaar database. Today it is the largest biometrical database in the world. Before it was FBI with 300 million transactions or information that they stored. This is 1 billion. There's no comparison. So, now these examples why I am giving you is that you can, if you write these little examples here and there, and then you show the risk of not protecting a database like this, you know, it's so, anyone reading your answer paper will realize that you have understood the implication of, you know, having protecting your systems, having your database. Now protecting the other database, it's extremely important. I don't have to tell you, it may not be written in any book, but you yourself will figure out how serious it is if someone can use your identification and make a transaction using your identification. I know it's difficult because it's got all this biometric built in, right? So you've got to put your fingerprint somewhere. So this is the way in which you got to link the systems together. Now you may have a problem with, I'm trying to tell you this because I know from a student's perspective, when you're studying, you may be reading some things which you have never been involved in, because all of you are doing articles in different places. Now you may come across, I mentioned ERP, you may come across co-banking system. Many of you may not have done a bank audit, or some of you may not have done a bank audit. So you cannot relate to a co-banking system. Now again, it's no rocket science, right? A co-banking system is nothing but your system that runs in a bank to take care of your current accounts, savings account, your trade finance, your depositories, your loans, your foreign exchange, all the different functions that run in a bank. And we know that, there are products like Finacle from Infosys, FlexCube from Oracle, these are all running in most of the banks. Now, if you're in a situation where you've got to write some answers on co-banking system, and if you can write, after you write the normal things that is there in the study material, and you can go and explode it by saying that, yes, there are some of the examples of the co-banking systems is Finacle from Infosys, FlexCube from Oracle, or banks from TCS. People realize that you have understood this pretty well, and you've even gone to the extent of trying to figure out what are the applications in the co-banking space. Okay? So, trying to give these examples, I'm telling you, you must give these examples, and the second thing you must do is that you must, till the exams and keep it going, is that this working with an IT friend of yours. You must do that. You know, because I can tell you for certain, in my initial days, I used to spend a lot of time with some IT friends, and that helped me understand these systems much, much better than what was written in the books. So, please make sure that you spend time with these IT people and ask them whatever simple thing. I'll give you an extremely simple thing for you. Say when they talk in terms of security, access security, for example. Like who gets access to what? Tell a person to open his laptop. Any IT person can show you this. How do you set up Windows security? He can show you. Okay, if he doesn't have it, go to Google. Download from Google Windows security tips or Windows security configuration. Download it. Keep that checklist in front of you. Tell your IT friend, please show me this, how to do this in my laptop. I will guarantee to you, 1 hour you sit with him, you will never forget Windows security for the rest of your life. Because you are young, you can store so much information in your memory, provided somebody shows it to you. That is the way in which, ask him, database security, how do I protect my database? Go to this thing and say Microsoft Access Database Security, download the checklist, tell him to show you. Now what happens is, when you see this practically, and then you go to the study material and start reading the study material, every single thing you read in the study material will become crystal clear. It is only because of the study material doesn't cover everything that you are doing in your article sheet, right? It covers something more than that, because a lot of you may not be exposed to systems audit in your articles. Whereas if you break this down and try to understand, remember, in information systems control and audit, there are 4 layers that you have to audit. One is the application. When I say application, I mean Oracle, SAP, Tally, Finacle, which is for co-banking. That is called application. The actual application that runs in your system, right, to run your business. Then you have retail applications like point of sale systems, which run in a store when you go and buy something. So you have to audit applications. The second thing that you have to audit is database. Because the database is where the data is stored and the applications are pulled and put in data into the database. So you have to protect that database. Now, having done the audit of, say, applications and database, what is the next thing that you have to do? You have to audit the operating system. Because there are 4 layers in any information thing. You have applications, you have your database, you have your operating system, and you have the networks. Okay. So the third one is operating system. You may turn around and say, why should I audit the operating system? This subject is ISCA. This is Information Systems Control and Audit. It is the protection of information systems. So operating system is one of them. If you do not protect operating system in your own laptop, unless and until you have systems administration rights, you will not be allowed to install any software. If you go to companies, any company, you cannot take your laptop and try to install something. They'll ask you whether you got sysadmin rights. Only people with system administration rights can install any software. Similarly, that is the reason why you have to audit the operating system in order to ensure that somebody has not gone and configured it in such a way that he can enter and do whatever he feels like in changing the access rights, etc. And the fourth thing is networks. Okay. Networks are the which is connecting everything from one system to the other. Practically every day you will find out some hacker has hacked into some system. Right? There is nothing called a safe computer. The only safe computer is the computer which is not plugged into anything and it is inside the cardboard box. Then the only safe computer in the world, which is not connected to anything. The minute you open it and plug it somewhere and you connect it into a network, it becomes unsafe. It becomes absolutely unsafe because people can easily get in and get out of your computer if you don't protect it. There was being in systems audit for such a long time. Out of interest, I used to go get into these areas to try and figure out how unsafe these are. And I used to have a trace software which I downloaded from the net and kept it on my computer. Every time I'm working on the computer, I used to get a red beep. If I click on that red beep, it will show me a trace. And this is in my home. It will show me a trace that somebody it will give the trace as Bangalore, Bombay, Bombay, Frankfurt, Frankfurt, some other place, and it could be in South America, somebody is trying to enter my system. Okay, that is what we are trying to protect. Now, the minute it is all, anything is connected from one to the other, right? It is a matter of, none of us give it importance in terms of, phishing attacks. For example, today phishing attacks is so common. Somebody gets your user ID password, gets into your bank account and transfers all the money out. Okay. You will find so many, like, which looks exactly like your bank. It can be HDFC. And when you go and put in your user ID and password, it will tell you things like server is down. Okay. Now these are all dummy. These are all dummy websites which are there, which created exactly, it's very easy to create a website which looks exactly like the original, right? Because the logos are all available on the net, you have to just copy paste that logo and create it like that. So it will look exactly like that, but what happens is you go and put your user ID password, it will say server is down, but by the time it tells you that message, it has already logged your user ID and password and stored it somewhere. Okay, so you will not think, you really think that it is the actual bank to which you went and entered the user ID and password. Protection of systems, when you're talking, give all these examples. I'm telling you, for one chapter, protection of systems, these are the examples you've got to write in your... You must have seen today, I'm telling you, in today's world, there will be so many places, small shops and restaurants, when you give your card, they will directly ask you what is the PIN number. Have you experienced that? People will ask. They don't realize that PIN number is something that you don't share. Okay. Now, you go to a small little restaurant, you go and sit there. The waiter will come and give you the bill. You give him the card. He will ask you, can you give me your PIN number because we cannot bring that machine here. You don't ever share your PIN number. Now this comes under protection of systems. It's like your toothbrush. You don't share your toothbrush. Okay. So whatever it is, whoever it is, you do not share PIN number. You do not share password. Now, the days which we are going to face in future is going to be totally digital, and even the Prime Minister talked about digital India. Unless and until you do this type of things and you protect your systems, so when you are talking and writing in the exam about protecting systems and all that, use all these examples, what I'm telling you. Talk as if you are absolutely current. Make statements after writing the fundamental thing about protection, if the question is on protection of system, after writing the fundamental things which are there in the study materials, make a small comment there saying that the future is going to be digital India, right? Everything, transaction is going to be digitized. It is very, very important for us to ensure that systems are protected to its fullest. Add that, so that at least they know that you are talking in terms of relevant things. They know that you have understood the importance of protecting information systems. I hope, I don't know, it's already, I can't even believe it, it's already 5. I am telling you these things, there are lots I can go on and on and on, right? But I have a time limit, I think it's 5 o'clock, right? Yeah. So I'm going to take questions now because at least for 5-10 minutes, please feel free to ask me whatever, either on what I've already said or something that is really bothering you. Let me tell you, there's nothing in this world called a foolish question. If you don't understand, ask. That's how you learn. Just ask. If something is bothering you in your mind right now, ask. Because if I can be of any help in, somehow, clearing your doubt or thought or something like that, so be it, because that's the reason I'm here.
So can you explain something about system development life cycle?
Yeah. There is a question here on whether I can explain on SDLC, System Development Life Cycle. It is very easy, it's a very simple thing to understand. System Development Life Cycle, why did they create System Development Life Cycle? Because they wanted a structured methodology through which systems are developed. Systems Development Life Cycle started in the days when you didn't have many ready-made software available. Okay, and you used to go and buy the software from the, off the table or off the shelf. So a lot of companies used to develop their own software. However, what I'm telling you here in Systems Development Lifecycle methodology is applicable to the people who create those products, and also if you're making it in-house and you're creating a new thing. Now, what are the different phases that you have? One is feasibility. Okay, you start with feasibility. Why do you have feasibility? The reason you have feasibility is that you should not put in technology for the sake of technology. It must have some benefit for the company. So you do your feasibility to figure out what is the benefits it is, how much it is going to cost you. Having done that, the next thing that you do is, I have to get the specifications, that is the functional requirements and the business specs. Now how do I go about getting the business specs? If I am a systems analyst, and say you are the, let us assume that we are trying to create some system we are developing for finance, okay, because being a chartered accountant, it is something to do with finance. Now what will I do as a systems analyst? I will come to you and I will ask your specifications. What is it that you want? You will tell me in plain, nothing to do with computer system. You'll say, I want this, I want this information captured, I want this type of reports for my analytics. You will give me what you need. Now as a systems analyst, right, so that is called user requirements, that is what you want. Business specs is when I take that and convert it into a document so that I know that I have understood what you have told me correctly, and I will give this business specs to you so that you will read it and then say, yes, Babu has understood it correctly. This will be my document for the next level, which is computer system design. So I will take this document and I will do the design. It's exactly like a building. If you are going to build a house, what will you do? You'll go to an architect. You'll say, I want 3 bedrooms, I want this, I want attached bathrooms all over, right? I want the living room here. However, for you to understand whether the architect has understood what you have said, he has to give you a drawing of a plan and elevation. Okay, how it will look from the front, how it will look from the side, and how it will look when you look at it from the top. Right? Once you, that is agreed, that's where you sign off. So once the user specs and the business specifications are done, you will sign off saying, correct, this your understanding is correct. Then it comes to the systems analyst and the technical people take over. So what they do is they take the specifications and then they will give it to the computer system design, where they will decide what is the database I need, what are the tables that I have to create, where do I store this type of information, all that, the entity, data entity relationship diagrams, all that will be done. And in this business specs also, they will go and put the flowcharts. You all know about flowcharts, right? So they will draw the flowchart so that the understanding is very clear. Why do they do flowcharts? Flowcharts are done so that you can identify if there is any risk and you can identify whether a control has to be built in. Okay. Having done after doing this business specs and after doing this computer system design, the whole thing is documented, and then the actual programming will start, where the programmers will see this, what are the requirements, and they will write the code. Now please remember that programmers are technical people. They will write the program exactly what is written on that business specs and what is written in those relationship diagrams. They will not write anything more, they will not write anything less, because they don't know. Okay? If you go to a programmer and tell him straight, you know, I want a program for receipt of goods in a warehouse, he'll have no clue what to do. You have to write and tell him what is goods receipt note, how do you get the goods, what are you supposed to do with shortages, what is it you have to do if I get some excess stock, you know, all that you've got to tell them. Right? They won't know. So they will take this and they will write the program. Now, having written the program, they need to know whether it works first. So the first thing they do is what they call as unit testing. Now, unit testing is that the programmer is testing whether that simple code, let us say that there's a code for creating an invoice, and he has written that code to create an invoice and print an invoice. That simple code works. Okay? That is called unit testing. That is done by the programmer. Then you have system testing, where you have to be sure that this works with other systems it's connected. Now, when I'm creating an invoice, it is not only the question of printing that invoice, it should also go and minus that amount which is being sold from the inventory. Now, that is inventory system. But this has to integrate, this information has to move from here to that inventory system and tell the inventory system, please minus the amount of stock. That is system. So I got to do this, make sure that the invoice is printed, and also make sure that the data relating to inventory is correctly passed on to the inventory system and the stock is minus. That is system testing. Then come to acceptance testing. Acceptance testing is, unit testing is correct. That means I have found out that the invoice is okay. Then I have come to the system testing. That also I find it okay. Now remember, when it comes to the acceptance testing, I bring this to you because I am doing this for you. You are the final person who is going to say whether this is correct. You will do the same testing, and you will look at it because you are a domain person. You are not a programmer. You are not going to check whether it is going and updating the database correctly. You are not bothered about that. But what you will do is, when you get the invoice, you will check whether the quantity multiplied by a price is equal to that. You will see whether that adds up, the taxes add up together. That's what you will do, right? These guys won't do that. They may do just some very basic stuff, but they won't know whether it's done correctly. Once you do that, and you do that acceptance testing, that is over. It's accepted by you. Then the next stage is, these programs are moved into production, because this is all done in the testing environment. Once it's moved into the production, it goes live. That's what they call go live. Once it goes live, the people who are supposed to use that program will start using it. And what you do is, after going live, you get sign-offs. There are sign-offs in all these stages. You come to the last thing, which is called post-implementation review, where you will do a review, say after 1 year, to see whether what the objective of what you created has been met. Now, to make sure that you have understood this and what is post-implementation review, I'm going to give you a real-life example so that you won't forget it. I was involved in the system development life cycle many, many years back as an auditor. So I have to sign off at business specs from controls point. I have to sign off when the system testing is done. I have to sign off at post-implementation review. There was a workshop system that we were creating for automobile industry, where they were selling Honda cars. So we were creating a workshop system in-house. We had the users who were giving the specs, we had the programmers, the systems analysts who were documenting all these things, and I was there from audit. We created this, then the people said we need this, we need this, we need now details of job cards opened, details of job cards closed, what is the profit that has been made, all blah blah blah. They wanted hundreds of things. Everything was developed. Everything. Then we went post-implementation review. I did it after 1 year because I wanted to see how much of what they wanted. So if they had spent X amount of dollars to create this system, I wanted to see whether they're getting the return on investment and how much of the information they're actually using. So when I was doing the post-implementation review, I noticed that in the screen you had create job card, change job card, delete job card. So many options are there, so many reports are there. They were using two options: create job card, close job card, bill. Right? There were about 10 different reports. They were just using one report, how many job cards were opened every day. All the others were waste, it was never being used. And I put it in, as an auditor, I reported it. To say that when you're asking for things, you've got to ask for things and make sure that it is required. You don't make things just for the sake of, creating it because there's a budget. So that is why this SDLC is very important. SDLC is extremely important because in a structured manner, you can make sure at every stage it is checked and rechecked by someone before it finally comes out.
So does your work as auditor was called audit trial or audit test? What you call it?
You mean for the system testing?
Yes.
Yeah.
You as an auditor, what you did?
When you do this, there is I told you unit test, system test, then user acceptance testing. Auditor is also treated as a user for this acceptance testing from the controls point of view. We test to see whether the controls built in are working properly. But I hope you got some idea of what SDLC is all about. I know this is not a place where I can take classes on, that's a different forum altogether. Yeah. But anything else before they tell me to leave? Okay. So, if, yeah.
Sir, wave 2.0, 3.0, what are those?
Those technologies, which is in emerging technologies. Okay, what I suggest you do is, because for me to explain this Web 2.0, it will take a lot of time. No, it is basically different types of technology because it's got this HTML5 and all that. It's different these things on creating this web. See, if you see the way the web sites and all were created, today everything is social networking, right? There's a lot in this social networking and social media and all that. My suggestion to you, the best way for you to see this Web 2.0 and Web 3.0, over and above what is written in the study material, but the study material is not very clearly written there. Go to YouTube, put Web 2.0 and Web 3.0. You will get this introductory, these things with diagrams. Okay? See, anything that you can link, especially in the systems world, to a diagram, right, or which is visual, you will not forget. In the systems world, the reason for that is because it's very difficult otherwise to figure out how an update is done on a database. Nobody sees anything, right? It's just stored there. Okay. So, Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 is more standards, different types of standards in technology which are bringing in to make things more interactive. Okay, with social media, etc.
So Facebook we are using, that is 2.0 or 3.0, how we find it?
You will never ever get a question like that. You will never ever get a question like that. Nobody is going to ask you a question, right? To know whether, it's like saying, is HDFC Bank using IP6 or IP4? I mean, it's not relevant to audit, it's not relevant to accounts.
No, and
My point is, my point is, you will never, they may ask you a question on HTTPS, but nobody is going to ask you about the protocol. That is for technical people. See, you must remember, your fundamental thing is chartered accountancy. You are learning ISCA only for the purpose of systems audit and control. But nobody will ask you anything like this.
No, sir, you told we shall relate it with examples so that it will be there in mind. So I'm just trying
Yeah, in Web 2.0 you can. No. But if you write an example, please don't go and write Facebook is Web 2.0 or 2.3. That is not relevant at all. You should know what Web 2.0 covers and what Web 3.0 covers. You see what is in Web 2.0 and what Web 3.0 and see what is it. Like the HTML5. Even HTML5, you don't have to know about HTML5. You're not a programmer. You're not a programmer. Nobody will even the examiner will not expect you to know that. You know, nobody's going to ask you a question on what is Java or JavaScript. Nobody's going to ask you what is C#. That is not relevant. You will never see. They may give you as an example. Someone asks you what is a programming language. You should know that there is a programming language called C, C#, etc. Okay, but they won't tell you to write something in C#. Okay, that's not it. Please try to, I'm only telling you to try and relate examples to real world applications, the ones I was giving you, which is either in retail, in banking, in privacy issues, in access. You know, that's why I give you those simple examples. Okay, so thank you all for hearing me out. I hope it helps and wish you all the very best in whatever you do.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of Bangalore branch of ICA and CA, I thank you for spending your valuable time. I request CA BT Shetty to present Memento as token of gratitude. Thanks to the faculty ICAI for helping with the event. A warm thanks to CA BT Shetty sir for conducting various seminars that are helpful to us as students. Lastly, I would extend my thanks for your participation. Thank you.